While much of the media attention is focused on the aftermath of the massacre in Paris last Friday, one day before, in Beirut, there was another bombing. Two different bombs killed 43 people and injured 200 in a heavily Hezbollah-friendly neighborhood. And now, Nick, there's people out there are saying, this is unfair, there's a double standard. The Paris massacre, it's in every outlet in the world, but the Beirut pales in comparison. The coverage is not the same. There was a critique even to the CEO of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, saying, why did you implemented the safety check feature for Paris, but you didn't for Beirut? Why are you painting the profile pictures of many in the French flag, but you're not doing the same for Lebanon? Is there a double standard? Is there racism in media?
I think you cannot. There's no way you can deny that things like the Paris attacks will get precedence in the media over an attack in Africa, without a doubt. Whether or not it's blatant racism, if we're going to compare the Garissa attacks in Kenya to the Paris attacks that just happened over the weekend, I don't know if that's fair to compare those two and just say that's flat out racist, because in America, for example, there's a lot closer ties culturally. We know a lot more about France. We have family, friends there than we do in Kenya, for example.
Yeah.
So I understand why it gets more coverage. I don't think that, French lives matter more than Kenyan lives. In no way is that what I'm saying. Yeah. But I wasn't surprised personally to see much more coverage of these kinds of things as opposed to something farther away in Africa.
And it's sad because if you see, we have the Russian plane down in Egypt.
Right.
We have, like you mentioned, the Kenya massacre at the Garissa University. 147 people were killed in April 2nd this year. Yeah. Al-Shabaab took responsibility for that one. ISIS took responsibility for the one in Beirut, and also for the Russian plane, and for the France attacks. But we have to agree on one very important issue, that is the fact that ISIS is furthering their terror in territories that we didn't see before. We're talking about choosing, if we do an analysis of the places that were attacking Paris, we're talking about a stadium where people went to enjoy a soccer match of their national team. We're talking about a concert hall where people was going to enjoy their evening, the freedoms of democracy. Another place, the bars where people was hanging out, the power of getting together and having a good time. We see that ISIS are attacking those things, those liberties that make the Western world, that they effectively have abolished from the caliphate. So we see that they're attacking freedom at its core in the Western concept of freedom. When you refer to Beirut, Beirut is a place where historically has been a hotbed for terrorism. Yeah. I'm not saying in no way, shape or form that one life is more valuable than the other, but the impact, the media impact of having a terrorist group that has so far contained to Iraq and Syria, and now we see that they go to the heart of Western culture in Europe, a place that stands as a symbol of culture, freedom, philosophy, free thinking. We see that ISIS go and kill civilians, and that's why the media all around the world is focused on that. Beirut, it's also, it's sad to see that they're attacking, but we know that there's other aspects to that attack. There's a Hezbollah-friendly neighborhood, there's political implications. This attack in Paris was straight up all civilian life that were enjoying their free time.
Yeah, well, Nairobi people in Kenya, they go to concerts, they have those kinds of freedoms as well. The attack at the university, I remember there were some reports that they were asking people about their religion, but for the most part, people were just getting shot down like it was nothing. But the reason that won't get as much coverage is simply because we relate more to the French people culturally in every other way than we do the African countries in the world, no matter which one it is. Even, one that we know a lot about, that we talk about more, is maybe a bigger country like South Africa. Still, there's more of that disconnection. I mean, Paris is very far from America. So are a lot of countries in Africa, but still, we relate more. And you talked about some activists coming out and getting angry about this kinds of thing. Those activists are not activists. They're activists when something like this happens. Correct. And they can go on Facebook and they can act cool, and all of a sudden they know everything about everything, and they're saying, well, how can you talk about Paris, but you didn't talk about what happened in Beirut? Who said no one's talking about what happened in Beirut? How did you hear about it then? And where did you get that image that you could copy paste to make yourself look cool, right? Just because a lot of people aren't engaged in what's going on in the world, then something happens like this, and then all of a sudden they know everything. But honestly, it's BS, and that's just something they do on Facebook to seem cool, or at least that's how I see it.
Exactly. Well, there's no denying that the most affected group of people in this conflict are the Syrian people that have been displaced. Millions of people have been displaced, and now we see that ISIS is opening their strategy to create this image in the Western mind that they can attack major cities like Paris, New York, Washington, and it's sad to see that this group is getting bolder and bolder.